A lot of times it can seem like Marian devotion is kind of a made-up thing. The reality is that Marian devotion is very much grounded in the scriptures, both in the Old Testament and the New. And this really comes through in a really powerful sort of way in the context of this story, Gospel of Luke chapter 1, the story of the Visitation. So basically, this is a story of the Blessed Virgin Mary. She visits her cousin Elizabeth in the aftermath of the Annunciation. But in order to understand the Visitation, you need to know something about the Ark of the Covenant. We've all heard about the Ark of the Covenant because of Indiana Jones, right? But the reality is the Ark of the Covenant was held to be the most sacred vessel in all of Israel because it was associated with the presence of God. So in particular, the Ark of the Covenant contained three things. So it contained the manna, the Ten Commandments, and it also contained the staff of Aaron. So just to kind of walk you through these things one at a time. So manna was the food which sustained the Israelite people as they traveled from the land of Egypt to the Promised Land. Ten Commandments, think about the prophet Moses carrying down those two tablets from the heights of Mount Sinai. And Aaron was the high priest. So manna, Ten Commandments, the staff of Aaron. Around the 6th century BC, the Jerusalem temple was destroyed. But then, around the same time, the Ark of the Covenant disappeared. And so there arose a prophecy. One day, the Ark of the Covenant would return, and with the return of the Ark, the return of the presence of God. Now, you hold that thought, you think about the Visitation, right? So the Visitation, in a certain sense, is built around this greeting given by Elizabeth to the Blessed Virgin Mary. So Elizabeth calls her cousin two things, and both those things are really important. So first of all, Elizabeth says to Mary that she is blessed. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. You hear that from the Hail Mary, right? In the Old Testament, there's two women who are called blessed. Both of them are warrior women, and both of them basically kill foreign generals by attacking them at the head. So one is named Jael. Jael basically drives a tent peg into the head of a foreign general while he's sleeping. There's that. And then there's someone named Judith, and Judith basically cuts off the head of another foreign general. And you're meant to make a connection between these acts of violence and what you find in the book of Genesis. So in the book of Genesis, you hear about our first parents, Adam and Eve, you hear about the serpent, you hear about original sin, and then what happens is that God the Father rebukes the serpent, and thereby issues this prophecy, otherwise known as the first gospel. One day, a long time from now, a woman will come about, and her seed, her son, will crush the head of the ancient serpent. So you put it all together, when Elizabeth calls Mary blessed, what she's saying is that you are this woman. You are the woman of the first gospel, and your seed, your son, will crush the head of the ancient serpent. Now, Elizabeth calls her something else. So Elizabeth calls Mary the mother of my Lord. How is it the mother of my Lord has visited me? She calls her the mother of my Lord as opposed to, for example, the mother of Jesus. Again, if you look at the Old Testament, the mother of my Lord is a very particular title, which refers to the Queen Mother. So basically, as a matter of background in the Old Testament, whenever there was a new Davidic king named in the region of Judah, the Queen Mother wasn't his wife, it was his mom. The Queen Mother wasn't just a figurehead. The Queen Mother actually had powers. Powers related to governance, intercession, she would advise the king, this sort of thing, right? So you put it all together, Elizabeth, by calling Mary the mother of my Lord, she's saying, look, you are the new Queen Mother in relationship to the new Davidic king, which of course is your son, Jesus Christ. Now you hold that thought and think about another passage in the Old Testament. 2 Samuel chapter 6. Basically, it's a story of King David bringing the Ark of the Covenant back into the holy city of Jerusalem. And what I want you to notice, you're meant to know certain parallels between this story and the story of the Visitation. So, in 2 Samuel chapter 6, what you hear is that King David brings the Ark of the Covenant from the land of Judah. In the story of the Visitation, what you find is that Mary visits her cousin Elizabeth in the land of Judah. On the way to the city of Jerusalem, King David makes a pit stop. He stops at a private home, and he stays there for 3 months. Mary stays at home of her cousin Elizabeth for the same amount of time, 3 months. When King David finally brings the Ark of the Covenant into the holy city of Jerusalem, the people of God, they rejoice. And he himself leaps and dances in the presence of the Ark. You look at the Visitation. Elizabeth rejoices in the presence of Mary, and the child in her womb, John the Baptist, leaps for joy. So basically what's being conveyed here, Mary is not simply the woman in the first gospel. She's not simply the new Queen Mother. She is also the new Ark of the Covenant. And with that, the presence of God has returned. You'll notice that within her womb, she has those three things. So the manna, the Ten Commandments, the staff of Aaron, but these things brought to fulfillment. So instead of the manna she has within her womb, the Eucharist. Instead of the Ten Commandments, she has the fulfillment of the law. Instead of the staff of Aaron, she has within her womb the true high priest, the one whose very being is a reconciliation of humanity and divinity. One final note about the Visitation. You'll notice that it ends with a song. The Visitation, which you find in the Gospel of Luke chapter 1, ends with a song, this hymn of praise, known as the Magnificat. So the Magnificat, basically, it goes something like this. My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in the Lord, my Savior, and so on and so forth. Basically, it's a narrative pause. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. There's a lot of stuff going on in our lives, right? And we often forget to stop and pause. But the Blessed Virgin Mary invites us to do precisely this. Life is busy. Life is complicated. Again, there's a lot of things going on, but you're called to stop and pause and taste and see and keep and ponder and to give thanks. There's many things we're called to give thanks for, but I would suggest that today, especially today, we're called to give thanks to Mary for her great fiat. Because of Mary's great yes, made in fear and trembling, and humility and trust, Christ is born, and salvation has come to the world.